It's really great to be here today and to be with you both. I'm going to just share a brief bio of our amazing guests, and then we're going to offer some incredible poetry. So Patience Agbabi is one of the UK's foremost writers and a sparkling performer who has spent over 30 years celebrating written and spoken word. Her work has appeared in anthologies on TV and radio, The London Underground and The Human Skin. In 2004, she was nominated as one of the UK Next Generation Poets. Patience is the author of 7 books, including her groundbreaking debut poetry collection, R.A.W. and Telling Tales, a vivid story of the Canterbury Tales, plus middle grade novels, The Infinite, The Time Thief, and The Circle Breakers, including Metamorphosis, Titian, 2012 at National Gallery. She has become a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature in 2017. Jason Allen-Paisant is from Jamaica and now lives in Leeds. He's widely acclaimed literally. Debut Thinking with Trees 2021 was shortlisted for the prestigious OCM Welkers Prize for the Caribbean Literature. Excuse me, my tongue. His second book, Thinking with Spirits, Engaging with Art and the Political. Now, I've been trying to say this. Is it aims to say? I thought I got that right. And will be published in 2023. Jason is a lecturer in the Caribbean poetry and decolonial thought and director of the Institute of Colonial and Post-Colonial Studies of the University of Leeds. He holds a doctorate in medieval and modern languages from the University of Oxford, and he speaks in 7 languages. That is incredible.
Everything else is right, but I no longer work at the University of Leeds. I moved across the Pennine, so I mean, I live in Leeds, but I work at the University of Manchester now.
So, without further ado, can you please give a warm welcome to Patience, who's going to kick off our first session.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I can see you now, which is wonderful. Thank you so much, Huddersfield Literature Festival, for inviting me up here. I've been in Huddersfield before, but never here in this space. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share some poems that I tend to perform in schools. And I think the reason I want to share these particular poems is that I believe I love it when poetry can work on lots of different levels. So when you go into schools, it's often teenagers, they don't like poetry, and I deliberately choose poems that will make them maybe think again. But I want them to be accessible, but I also want them to have lots of layers and depth. So if they want to go there and actually, get their A star, then they're going to have to do a bit more work than just go, yeah, that's a great poem. So yeah, and I wanted to begin with the prologue of my 4th book, Telling Tales, which was a remix of all of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. And I specifically wanted to start with that today because it's the 1st of April, which medievalists will know is Juan dat April Day, as in the beginning of the Canterbury Tales. So, so basically what I did, I took the Canterbury Tales, I remixed them for the 21st and multicultural Britain. And the original tales were hosted by Harry Bailey, who was a real innkeeper back in Southwark in the day. And I've kind of remixed Harry as Harry Bells Bailey. Okay, so I won't read the bio because it's a different kind of set I'm going to do today, but I'll just do the poem. But imagine this is in the voice of Harry Bells Bailey. This is prologue grime mix. When my April showers me with kisses, I could make her my missus or my mistress, but I'm happily hitched. Sorry, home girls, said my vows to the sound of the bow bells. Yet her breath is as fresh as the west wind. When I breathe her, I know we're predestined to make music. My muse, she inspires me. Though my mind's overtaxed, April fires me. How she pierces my heart to the fond root, till I bleed sweet cherry blossom en route to our bliss trip this day she goes off me. April loves me, not April loves me. With a passion, dear doctor, I'm word sick, and I got the itch like I'm allergic. But it could be my shirt's on the cheap side. Serenade overnight with my peeps wide. Nothing like her liqueur and elixir. Over proof that she serves as my sick cure. She's as strong as a ram. She is Aries. See my jaw-dropping jeans, she could wear these. See my jaw-dropping neat Anglo-Saxon. I got ink in my veins more than Caxton, and it flows hand to mouth, here's a mouth feast, verbal feats from the streets of the southeast. But my April, she blooms every shire's end, fit or vint, rich or skint, she inspires them. From the grime to the clean-cut iambic, me royale, rant or rap, get your slam kick. On this route, Master Bus, get cerebral, Tabardine to Canterbury Cathedral. Poet pilgrims competing for free picks. Chaucer Tales track by track, here's the remix. From below the belt base to the top notch, I won't stop all the clocks with a stopwatch. If the rhymes overrun, run offensive, or unclean out of steam, they're authentic. Because we're keeping it real, reminisce this. Chaucer Tales were an unfinished business. May the best poet lose, as the saying goes. May the best poet muse be mistaying those on the page, on the stage, on the subject. Me and April, we're the rhyming couplet. I'm the host for tonight, Harry Bailey. If I'm tongue-tied, April will bail me. I'm MC, but the M is for mistress. When my April shows me what a kiss is. You kind of there got, I mean, rhyme mix is obviously very, very different to iambic pentameter, but when you see it on the page, it looks like iambic pentameter, and it's kind of like reworking the couplet. And I just feel poems always have to do more than one thing. And so that's trying to do lots of different things at once, and very much, but like I say, very much welcoming. I think that you have to give people a door into poetry quite often. I don't deliberately set out to as such, I just naturally do that, but I'm kind of, today's about breaking things down and discussing kind of the nuts and bolts as well as sharing stuff. So I'm going to do, my next poem is called R&B. I'm very much inspired by Northern Soul, rare 60s African-American dance music, and sort of R&B came a bit before that. But so I'm not thinking of the more recent rappy R&B, I'm thinking of the sort of old school R&B. So that's one of the inspirations for this piece, but also very much imagery and poetry. You know, I sort of name drop references. There aren't that many. And again, I feel that, you know, a poem, you want people to enjoy it on the surface, but if people get the references, even better. So this one's called R&B, and it's what I call my love-hate poem. Put on your red dress, baby. Let me button up my blue jeans. You revitalize me daily. You're the lifeblood running through my veins. You're the setting sun in my clear blue sky, and in my midnight blue, you're my harvest moon. Sometimes we argue, and I don't know why. You're Mars, and I'm Neptune. You accuse me of quenching your fire. I accuse you of blocking my flow, but you're the ruby to my sapphire. You're the bright red cherry to my blue-black sloe. And you're the red rag to my raging bull. You always see red when I sing the blues. You're the ladybird tracing the ridge of my clavicle. You're the lipstick on my collar. I'm your blue suede shoes. You're the red breast on my blue velvet. I'm the aerogram in your postbox. You're my ruby slippers. You're my red carpet. I'm the poet, but baby, you're my thought fox. You're the red and enamored. You're wicked. You're Scarlett O'Hara, and I'm Betty Blue. I'm the blue pill in the Matrix, but you're the red. Yeah, you're my red phone bill, overdue. You got more kick than red rum. You're red raw, red-handed, red hot. I metamorphose into blue nun. Your love lies bleeding. I'm forget-me-not. You say we were a mismatched couple, but I'm reminiscing too. And I remember how we made the colour purple. And my eyes are red from missing you. Now, whenever I perform that one in a school, I know none of them get the colour purple reference. The teachers get it, the kids don't. But anyway, it's just as well they don't, because that's the thing. You can get away with something quite kind of steamy, as well as, because obviously it's not just the colour purple and that implication of lovemaking, but also, of course, the book, The Colour Purple, which is very much celebrating lesbian sexuality, and but they don't know that, so that's fine. She says. But actually, no, but I wish they did, because in a way, if a kid came up to me and actually said, "Oh, is that reference? Is that, you know, referencing?" I'd be so happy, you know. So yeah, okay. So I'm going to share. I don't know. I don't want to do that one now. You know, I'm going to change. Yeah, I'm just gonna go on to, because I want to sort of talk more and read a bit less. I'm going to do a poem that's on the A-level syllabus. I'm still quite surprised it's on the A-level syllabus. You're nodding. Do you know which one it is? No, you don't. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So I think when I started out as a poet, there was, I mean, there was, and probably still is, a bit of a sort of snobbery, and performance poets are here and literary poets are here, you know, and there's this sort of Berlin Wall between the two, which thankfully has crumbled quite a lot since then, and so has the wall. But I don't know, there was I had this sense of, I'm passionate about form and craft. I really want people to study my work in schools and universities. You know, that wasn't my primary aim at all. I just wanted to create poems, and, you know, because I love art and I love writing. But actually, there was a point, I think, I always felt like I had something to prove. And then, of course, over the years, of course, it has happened, and I'm thrilled. But I'm also still in shock that this particular poem is on the A-level syllabus. Yeah. So what will I say about it? It was actually, yeah, inspirations. I mean, it was partly inspired by a Channel 4 documentary, one of the sort of very first reality TV type, well, I say reality TV, but more almost like a fly on the wall type sort of documentary that kind of watched probably in the early zeros. I won't say any more about it. I will just perform the poem, which is called Eat Me. When I hit 30, he brought me a cake, 3 layers of icing, homemade, a candle for each stone in weight. The icing was white, but the letters were pink. They said, eat me. So I ate, did what I was told, didn't even taste it. Then he asked me to get up and walk round the bed so he could watch my broad belly wobble, hips judder like a juggernaut. The bigger the better, he'd say. I like big girls, soft girls, girls I can burrow inside with multiple chins, masses of cellulite. I was his jacuzzi, but he was my cook. My only pleasure, the rush of fast food. His pleasure, to watch me swell like forbidden fruit. His breadfruit, his desert island after shipwreck. Or a beached whale on a king-sized bed craving a wave. I was a tidal wave of flesh, too fat to leave, too fat to buy a pint of full-fat milk, too fat to use fat as an emotional shield, too fat to be called chubby, cuddly, big-built. The day I hit 39, I allowed him to stroke my globe of a cheek. His flesh, my flesh, flowed. He said, open wide, poured olive oil down my throat. Soon you'll be 40, he whispered, and how could I not roll over on top? I rolled and he drowned in my flesh. I drowned his dying sentence out. I left him there for 6 hours that felt like a week. His mouth slightly open, his eyes swollen with greed. There was nothing else left in the house to eat. Okay, I thought I'd sort of really lower the tone quite seriously, but we are in a basement bar, aren't we? And one of my pieces in Bloodshot Monochrome, my third book, starts in a basement bar, black and white. I think very much for me, sort of going to a lot of clubs, especially in London, when I was living in London years ago, so many poetry clubs were in the basement, and you almost felt that sense of post-watershed. You know, you're going down the basement and sort of all this sort of stuff that hasn't really been said in poetry before is going to come out, and I really sort of love that. But yes, so you can see why I might be quite surprised having that on the A-level syllabus, but it is on the A-level syllabus, and I do get direct messaged about it quite a lot with people. The key thing is that last line, there's nothing else left in the house to eat. People sort of say, they all ask, what happens? Does she eat him at the end? You know, that classic thing that you know, 95% of students text me and ask that. And my response is always, a poem can say more than one thing at the same time. It's both, you know, because I like to get them to even think that idea. It's not just one meaning. And that's what I love about poetry. There's more than one meaning. There's always more than one meaning. So, yeah. So I'm going to end my set with another poem that I think is really playing with the idea of more than one meaning. And it's written in a form that I really love called the specular form, which some of you might have come across a poem by Julia Copus called The Backseat of My Mother's Car. Anyone? No, everyone's like, anyway, you can look it up online. I think she did something in the Family Guardian years ago, so it's actually available online. And it's a specular form. I won't go into it because it's pretty obvious when I perform it. But what's interesting about it, it was written, you know, as a visual form, as a mirror. as a visual thing, but I'm very interested in the relationship between visual and sound, between the written and the spoken word. And I have to say, you know, when people say, oh, performance poet or literary poet, I get quite cross sometimes. I think actually there's, yes, but yes, you can categorize to some degree, and I understand why. Let's face it, I've deliberately, you know, done poems that I know so I can perform them, because I think that's what was expected. But actually, there's often sort of an interesting relationship going on between the two, and a lot going on in between too. So this poem is called Josephine Baker Finds Herself, of course, in homage to the known, I suppose, very much, she's known, Josephine Baker, mostly for the banana dance, of course, in the 1920s, but she was also a singer, a dancer, and a political activist, and not everybody knows about that side of her. I use a term, actually, la garçon, in the poem, which was a term used in the 1920s to describe a sexually liberated woman. Josephine Baker finds herself. She picked me up like a slow-burning fuse. I was down that girls' club used to run in Brixton on acid for fuel. Lipstick lesbians, techno so hardcore it's spewing out Audis. She samples my heartbeat and mixes it with vodka on the rocks. I'm her light-skinned, negative, short, black, wavy-bobbed diva. She purrs, la garçon, fancy a drink? I say yes. She's crossing the star bar like it's a catwalk, so sleek. A string of pearls, her flapper dress studded with low-cut diamonds through my skin, straight to my heart. 20s chic. She works me up and down. I worship the way she looks. The way she looks me up and down, I worship 20s chic. She works through my skin, straight to my heart, studded with low-cut diamonds. The string of pearls, her flapper dress. Yes. She's crossing the star bar like it's a catwalk, so sleek she purrs, la garçon. Fancy a drink, I say. 20-something, short, black, wavy bob diva. Vodka on the rocks, I'm her light-skinned negative. She samples my heartbeat and mixes it with techno so hardcore it's spewing out Audis on acid for fuel. Lipstick lesbians, that girls' club used to run in Brixton like a slow-burning fuse. I was down. She picked me up.
That was a really beautiful set, Patience. Thank you so much. It's a real privilege to hear all your work, well, some of your work, but yeah, it's a real privilege to have you here with us today. Jason. Let's give Jason a warm welcome.
Thanks, Sharena. Thanks, Patience. Admiration. And I was just thinking, you know, to myself, you know, I wish when I was doing poetry in high school, you know, I had people with, you know, like mentality of yourself coming in, kind of, you know, it would have been, yeah, that would have been something. Yeah, and as somebody who teaches, I feel that as well.
I was just going to hasten to add that I don't perform that one in schools, but it is used for schools recitation competition for poetry by heart. That tends to get taken up by A-level students who like to kind of, because it's a challenge to learn. As usual, it's a challenge to learn it and get the words right and perform it. But so that's the angle for that one. Yeah, I feel a little bit nervous about, you know, standing up because it's just so racy. That's all.
Yeah. Here we go. Get my phone. Keep an eye on the time. Smile of leeches, perfect circle of pain. A woman's lips, the eagerness in her eyes. We descend stairs of stone. The woman I had kissed in the middle of the street is here on the ground in the club, glory and praise. The woman I had kissed in the north is here in the south, and yes, I'm going back to seek her, a shard in my palm. Douleur, the oozing, oohing of the ooh and the ah. Of the grinding, the sound of pain is a winding, whining, do, douleur, do. Dance with me is a wine in my mouth, there's a sexiness of the words, is a land of sin, of pain, the neon lights, the thirst of skin on skin, smell of hunger, violon dingue, sounds in the night sea, going down underneath stones, coming back up ain't sure, but down, down, down in the locked deep. These stones be watching me. My jumper's too ugly. My locks don't fit, the shame fly won't quit. My head don't stand right, not suave, smooth, small. My sebaceous glands ooze, monsters. My head don't fit, I don't fit right inside it. And what about my arms? I can't control the way they bend, cannot find home for my self, for my body, inside porous, inside Paris, inside the skin of my small house of mummy, of missiles of mopsticks flying. I've drowned my pain tonight like yesterday, like so many other nights, from bar to bar, from hole to hole, from drink to drink. I've drowned my pain crying, daddy, daddy, when, daddy? I pull myself through tight spaces, through the twists and turns of the Marais' dim alleyways. The locks won't do, but I insist I sleep the days away. No one can see me, ghost actor. Will it be worth it? Will it be worth it? My woman has left me, no ground left under me. My granny now lies in the earth. September spiraled into October, October into a circle of shadows. Show me the hidden side of the script. The question of the futile terrorizes me. There are many sighs, bodies mainly mine. I see now rushing around on the edge of Acheron, hurrying to one place, then fleeing in opposite direction. Show me the hidden side of the script I want. The kind of life that can be read, not piddling poetry, mooching along instead. Why do I always have to be translated, never well represented? I need to find a place to be spectacular. In this place, I am too many things, and life is easier when you singular. At nights in the cafette, École Normale Supérieure, hair dancing over faces like flames. Come to me, the Wolaona. Let me fill you with my desire. I am hungry for talk. I am a stranger. We smile fake, scream fake, dance fake. The body's eager, the body's white. Marble statues in a storybook, white body of my learning. Come now, you and I, be my Desdemona on stage in the cafette. Let us dance all night under the light. Your hair of snakes will worm and knot us together. No light, no air. The music is my body on yours. September spiraled into October, October into a circle of shadows. Look down on this child. Even in my dream, me I beg, daddy, daddy, when, daddy? Absence and loss meet in the middle finger to you. Me voici dans la foule, accepting big invitations, Odéon, Salle Pleyel, the plush carpeted Comédie Française, a place in the upper stalls, the speakeasy on Champs-Élysées, 40 euro for an entree, aspirationniste, assume. You must feel it in the speakeasy, duo of foie gras and half-cooked tuna, live jazz drinking up Veuve Clicquot, saxophone and piano riffing, miles into space, you must feel it. Then, when they carry the bill, she pays cash. 2,000 odd, blouse and skirt, cash money flashing on the table. Her daughter, Chris, like money, my body weak. You must feel it like you could, but daddy's a civil engineer. Monkey. You've got to be what you loathe, what you scorn, a boxboat, harborless, says Brathwaite. Nice word, harborless spade, bastard picnic, embrace, each away a different father story. Embrace, no dad, absence and loss in the middle. Throw away the damn tweed, put on your gold chain and rock that pendant with the studs, the hefty cross. Step out in your donkey swag, them girls rush you in the club and outside the violon dang from 12 to 5 in the morning. In Prague, a hot summer's day on the Charles Bridge, the river's demented blades, a sunlight of sunlight, a yellowness compelling me to jump. I split the air like a horse's stride. The moist legs of the morning emerge like islands on the surface of the sea. My desire beats like a thoroughbred. We hunted carnal pleasure, my friend and I agreed it was a game of healing and transgression. Myself was lurking, ready to step out of the shade. I was the ultimate in black. My body swelled up till Kaya hair, thick lips, and African nose filled the universe as the waters came into me. Myself emerged from Prague's river. Then the night swayed its hips into the heaven of a dance hall. Like towers, my desires rose. Get up, I heard them speak, rising into the darkness as the enigma of a woman passed my way. Her thighs mantled in coital light, we danced. I could feel within my chest her surprised command. It was Obia possessing her soul. The rest of the night, I was the ancient king laughing over the city. I was Gable and Arch. A horse was neighing, threatening to break the barrier of my skin to allow a shout to get out and in, breaking the wall of my skin, crying out and in. I call you daddy, bois de ben, pieces of scattered wood, disappeared and blasted, scattered to the east and west, to the north and south. Mon passé est là, qui me montre et me dérobe son visage. Undad, undad, I ain't died, I split, divide, and recreate. I ain't one, I multiplied. On the Ponte di Rialto, I watch myself glide like distances, on distances of times and seas. Rialto shivers like the lagoon's contours, like the dream of marble in my veins, waves gliding to the distant country and back to this bridge to the country where I first heard the name Rialto through Shakespeare taught in a Jamaican tongue, where I let it ring and echo and disappear into time. Now I come and find it made real. La Serenissima. My senses soar like the flame in Bellini's reds, like the curling flames of Tiziano and Giorgione, Tiepolo and Tintoretto. The light over the Canal Grande, il paese che un dì sognai, già lungo tempo lo cercai, between houses whose walls never tire of the water's tongue, rapimento of skirts, the air filled with mosaics, tesserae of dreams, how they move, thronging this city around whose corners the mind turns endlessly, never tiring, each lapping of the lagoon's tongue a page, tessera dei miei sogni. I sit on the barbecue when the bath water pour and the sun get cold and the orange water soak the ground. The drum water make music and evening crack and ooze like mango. I kick the air like a grass straw in my mouth. The night meeting building, hands clapping, feet tapping. Tonight I'm rising from my body, and before you know it, I'm flying through the clouds. Ever seen a man travel more, seen more lands than this boy from Coffee Grove, where hope is like the dry root of a red dirt rock stone? Now we're doing road, dancing through Prague, Paris, Rome, auch in München bin ich zu Hause. Can you believe me bouncing up into Oxford every week and I paint that town red? And I don't mind all the whiteness, and I don't mind all the tweed, and I don't make all the posh talking bother me. Watch me speaking 4 languages outside the club. Watch me in Prague among the patina streaked marble. I'm dancing through Europe, actor and spectator in a carnival of bodies. I'm doing road in Venice, where the Blackmore head is placed on doors and rung by hand every day. Florence, Bordeaux, and Nice are doing road. My future, the shadow peeping through fog, the shadow speaking, seeking me. Undad, with you I feel death and I feel birth. I have never felt them so close together. With you, I am born and stand looking down at myself as if coming into the world for the first time. Me is rising, standing up straight, ready to run, to bound. What I am now stands on its feet. Thank you. The book is called Self-Portrait as Othello. So, I mean, you probably heard some resonances, you know, Desdemona, Venice, you know. There's a section where it really zeroes in on this old Othello Shakespeare play. I'm just gonna read. But it's a sort of, how would I put it? It's a way of getting into the text, you know, a way of kind of like refracting my story through the text rather than, you know what I mean? So, I'm gonna read a kind of, I'm getting making my way into it. This one is called Punted. So this is not Othello yet, but just to get my way. Punted down the Cherwell. If my mother had told me a white man would serve you, I would have said, you lie. Serve you over there. That you would be over the white man in his own country. Oh, colonial in defeat. Image of centuries swallowed. Look at them teeth, how they white. As I sail down the river Cherwell with a white man punting my punt. Who is Othello? 1. Raised on the river Gambia, I learned to row in the Venetian way, dive with amphibian lungs and fight with hands and sword. Men came looking for us, promising residences on the Canal Grande, estates on the mainland, jobs as condottieri. At 28, I was in Venice. At 30, a commander of land armies. Othello, from Old High German Otto, meaning rich and prosperous. I am here and I'm striving. Otello dalla Guinea is my name. I stopped in at many ports where sailors cavorted. I stopped in at Venice and it became my home. Who is Othello 2? The decree of 1489 distinguished between white and black slaves for the first time. And in the midst of that, you as a noble black in Venice, Saraceno nobile, contracted because of your skills in war, a sailor and sea captain, tall and sculptural, your body split the wind boldly. Condottiero, you excel in battles, but not in the city. Othello walks through the marbled city, his skin betrays him. He is striving against bad mind. This is Othello's life, trying to beat the odds And what is asked of him? To be more fair than black, if virtue no delighted beauty lack. You're real to me as I ring your name, more present than the living. I imagine scenarios that may have brought you to this city. In one of them, you're following your father's footsteps across the oceans. You're looking for him in the wind. And I'll just end my set with Self-Portrait as Othello 2. It has an epigraph from Dion Brandt, A Map to the Door of No Return. The black body is signed as physically and psychically open space, a space not simply owned by those who embody it, but constructed and occupied by other embodiments. Inhabiting it is a domestic, hemispheric, transatlantic, international pastime. There is a playing around in it. You left home for a wandering lust, for pain had driven you to the edge of yourself, and wanting to open the windows of life, you decided to migrate to this country. You came for a different sound, the quaintness of gestures, of faces and food. New tongues are something like trophies, facha, faces, facade. The facade hides things. You like this, each new word an erotic death. Your language grows with buried things. What does it mean to be far more fair than black? Education, speech, dress, learning. You have the brawn of an intellectual rude boy, sturdier in brain work than in war. No streets and levity, talk Shakespeare, Baudelaire, Dante, and Nietzsche, talk sound system. What actually is the language of where you're from? It's that familiarity with rough life, that eye of struggle, that smell of fight, hardness of speech, a coming up vibe, Oxford and all, that she likes. So invites you to visit at Christmas, 3 whole days with family and one party to the next. But they think it's going to pass, this fascination with the dark-skinned boy. Surely she'll come around, find someone of her kind when she is sated. Thank you for your time.
Yes, and that was really powerful, which I really enjoyed listening to. And I'm sure everybody here was surprised. So now it's time for me to share some of my own poetry. I didn't actually read a bio of myself, So basically I'm a poet from Bradford, West Yorkshire, and I've been writing poetry for most of my life. And I have this collection, She, which is published by The Verve. And I have my second collection, which is due to be out in October for National Poetry Day, and it's called Shush. And I'm going to share a couple of pieces from my book. And then I also have my best pieces that are in my phone, which is a bit poor, but I'm going to share this first poem. And this poem is a poem that I wrote for my mum. And I don't share many positive poems about my mum because I had a difficult relationship with her, but this poem is one that is very positive, and I treasure it a lot. It's called She is a Warrior. She is a warrior, a flame of fire, a piece of art. Everyone desired a piece of her heart. She was a wanted woman, she wanted no man. She was rebellious and never stuck to no plan. A real change maker, tough as iron steel. She was fierce and would never back down or let anyone try to knock off her crown. She was chaotic in her own beautiful way, and her face was something that should have been on display. Beauty that was concealed, that concealed her soul from her painful past, born unwanted and seen as the outcast. Yet she never let it show. She planted her pain and watched her flowers grow. Heather, she grew amongst fields and not swamped in the mild dew, painting landscapes, the highlands, a lavender view. She radiated power, electrical waves. She took on the world's strength, and she was the brave. In a world that she was never accepted on her own. A fighter, a warrior, slaying her demons on the battlefield, with her bare hands and not a shield. She is my warrior. Her strength is now mine. as the wind blows and passes down our bloodline. I will always remember her, wars and battle scars, as she aligned the hearts of moons and stars. Only the brave as she fought on, decades later and still holding on, praying for her one day to keep me strong. For she is my warrior. Thank you. The next poem I'm going to share is one about my identity. It's something that I tend to write a lot about, and it's basically because I am mixed race. I'm Indian, Pakistani, and English. And growing up, I struggled with my identity, and I struggled, in a society that I didn't feel accepted. So this is called identity. I was once a child with no identity. My body was riddled with DNA cells that my own body rejected. My body was infected with a disease that showed in the pigment of my skin. Visually, you could see the colour of my skin, but clueless you were to the scars I carried within. My bones were formed from the fragments of earth my soul has never seen, a land I've never touched or ever been, where it smells of sweet jasmine and loud people talking in a language that I never understood. Yet that language is connected to me like land meets sea. I am your split of continents. I am your flags combined. My bloodline is scattered across foreign seas and my home is nowhere. I'm a stranger to others and a stranger to myself. Sometimes in this body, I'm a hazard to myself. Who am I? For what purpose was I created? I was left feeling completely isolated. I question this curse, when my mother would give birth to me, a mixed race child, a breed branded wild, and I grew up confused. I see myself as just a child, blessed with a sight, and a vision to see beyond imperfections and beauty. I see me as just me, not defined by the colour of my skin or my ethnicity. I didn't even understand such words back then. Culture and religion didn't mean much back then, but the colour of your skin did. And the abuse I once received scarred this once young kid. I was already struggling with my identity. I was called the half-caste kid, the mixed breed. What really was a need to cast me aside with the weeds because I was different. It took me time to see, but I finally started to understand that I would have to rise above all the negativity to reach the love. I'd have to overcome the hate and start rewriting my own fate. I knew one thing for sure, I'd never be fully accepted by both my white and Indian family. I was a misfit, the piece that didn't connect properly, until I took charge of what controlled me. Now I embrace my ethnicity, no longer ashamed of me. I'm not dual heritage and I am mixed race, and I'm fine if others want to say that to my face because I stand for what I say, for what I speak, when I say being mixed race is unique. It took me many years to find comfort in my own skin and realize we are all beautiful from within. Being different is a damn good thing. Thank you. So I'm going to go into my phone and I'm going to share a poem. So in my life, poetry has always been driven by my own life experiences, and there was lots of trauma when I was growing up, and your brain kind of like shuts off. So if I try look back at some of my memories of my childhood, I can't remember it because it was that traumatic that my brain's automatically switched off. And in this poem, it's all about memory loss, but memory loss in a positive way, saying that it's kind of protected me in a way. Memory loss. They say it's through trauma that our brain walls off a memory, sheltering one from the enemy that's still trying to deplete you of your energy. Memories are a fragment of a time that we once lived, or barely lived, but survived. Memories that still traumatize, the past of your life that still hurts inside, like 1,000 knives slicing the scars that slowly healed. Time still reveals it's not easy to heal, from the mental scars that you cannot see, but hell can you feel. The haunting echoes that they still try to climb, the very mountains that you have built. You're responsible for the torments of my thoughts, and I hope you are burdened with its guilt. For the second I've struggled to breathe, for the minutes I wanted to die, the hours that tormented my tears and the weeks that made me cry. There's time when these memories flicker like a light switch, the malfunction of the brain, a memory glitch. When things start to creep back in, things you've locked away, that you've hidden out of sight, so they could never see the light of day. Them damn memories trying to find a way to make you face what you're trying to forget. Knowing you cannot delete the corrupted files with reset, because they are implanted into a field of me, the demons of my memories that no one ever sees, except the part of my brain that is trying to protect me, with this memory distortion suppressing the information that the memories of my past needs to destroy me, to rip apart my organs internally. Memory loss is not always a loss when it's the cost of your freedom. My past thought it could mess with me again, but my brain showed me it's the only thing in place that can ever kill my space with my past memories. Our bodies work in harmony to keep us protected. And sometimes our thoughts try to reject this, but I'm blessed with memory distortion. Thank you. And I've got 2 more poems. So this poem that I'm going to read next is one about coming into spring and thinking about winter and letting go of all that dark gloom and the coldness, and thinking about the warmth and the new beginnings. Step into the light. Tiptoe out of the darkness and take a deep stride into the light. Pull the blue sky closer with your fingertips. Pull it into your arms. Feel the warm charm of its presence. Bask in the golden sun rays that feel like heaven. No longer needing the sound of the tick and the tock. We've got greetings from the morning birds tweeting, telling you it's time to realign a new you, to shake off those winter blues. It's time for you to blossom once again. You have soaked in the earth's tears of rain, in its silence, staying silent. Now it's time for you to roar again, to reroot your pain into Mother Nature's veins, into her soil. It's time to awaken from the sleep you've been taking. You've been sleeping for far too long, and that energy is craving for new adventures, to be free, to run without thinking, to fall without hurting. It's now time to embrace the seasons returning. Are you ready to step into the light? To breathe new beginnings that are destined for you, born through the shit you've been through? Are you ready to let go, unlearning all that you know, to give birth to a new you birthing you? Them labour pains are for your own self-gain if you can finally break through the darkness that's been misguiding you. It's time to grow through what you've gone through, shed free of the layers revealing the naked you, like the hauntingly bare trees that grieved as their leaves fell to your feet, decaying under the soles of your shoes, standing in their nakedness with nothing to seek comfort in. And now, as they prepare for the return of spring, the cycle life brings, it's a reminder that you get a chance to redo everything. Are you ready to step into the light? Thank you. And the last poem, so a lot of my poems are very, very personal and come from lived experiences. But this poem that I'm going to read now is one that I don't get to read very often. And it's about dementia. And I was doing a lot of research about dementia, and I was kind of trying to put myself in the person that had dementia and how they felt. So this poem is from the perspective of a person that's suffering with dementia. I cannot run or escape this fate that my body has succumbed to. Memories I have stored for years and years will perish with me. Your tears will fall and I'll never know why, and I'll never understand or see that you are scared of losing me to a disease I cannot cease to end, leaving me to a still silence, a fight I cannot defend. As I slowly wither away, my thoughts turn into dust, as I forget your sweet love and your hands of trust, not knowing who I am or who you are. When you're stood directly in my face or from afar, you will fear for my safety, you will fear for my life. In this body of emptiness, you'll think I'm barely alive. But just know through each painful passing day, when I cannot speak or tell you what I need to say, remember I will always love you. In your darkest days when you struggle to make it through, remember my heart and soul is right next to you. When I leave my body, when I leave every single memory, remember I tried. I tried to hold on for as long as I could. And if I could have fought on, I truly would. Think back to the time when I slurred my speech or blinked my eye. It was the only way I could say goodbye. Through this disease that's telling my soul to leave, my body dementia is robbing me of my time with you. Just remember, Even when my eyes fail to recognize and my lips fail to speak, remember, I will always love you. Thank you. So we've all shared some poems, and I think it's going to be a great chance now for us to just get into a bit more about started writing poetry and how we got into that, and ask some questions from you here and from our lovely audience online if they want to ask me questions. But I think it'd be a great time now to just really and think about, why did you start writing poetry?
Who do you want to go first?
We'll start with you.
Okay. Why poetry in particular? I think I was lucky. I was read to as a child. As a very young child, stories, poems, fairy tales, nursery rhymes. I love the sound of words, and that's how I learned to read. I learned to read through whole word recognition, just from hearing things. And as a child, asking my parents to repeat and repeat and repeat. And so I think that stayed with me. And I think I have written 4 novels now, but I'm first and foremost a poet, and I'll always be a poet, because for me, that sort of that link with the visual and the sound I always come back to. And so and the fact that what I love about poetry, what I really love about it, is you can hold it in your head. You can learn a poem and almost like make it your own. So it can be written by someone else who's long dead, but you can learn their words and kind of hold them and use them when you need them. And I love that. And I love the communality of poetry, that we can have an event like this. For me, it's and I suppose I like working with the shape on the page also. There's all these things that I think makes poetry kind of special.
Thank you, Patience. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, similar reasons. I think when it comes down to it, the culture that I'm from, so born and grew up in Jamaica. The culture that I'm from is an oral culture, and I think, not to sound corny or kind of try to find a point on it, but I think really a lot of people, because of that the orality and that sense of rhythm, like a lot of people are natural poets. Because you've got a lot of storytelling around you. You've got a lot of just the oral cultures. That's how they work. There's a lot of the transmission is through the word. It's through reciting, saying things and so on. And so that's where if I think of, to kind of bring it home, I think of the decade that I kind of grew up in, 1980s, those toasters and those DJs. I mean, that's poetry. The village DJ walking down my street and always, always testing out his lines, riding the rhythm, as they say. That's poetry, so you develop a natural kind of flair for knocking words together and feeling them out, and kind of, a lot of people do that. And I think I start with that because I think a lot of my first interest in words come from that kind of vibe. But also, and this is closely linked, the first, so in Jamaica, you go to school. It's an interesting education because when I was in the 80s, you saw just coming out of that kind of the colonial kind of thing where the first and foremost is your Wordsworth and your Shelley and your Shakespeare and so on. Well, you have teachers now kind of teaching you Jamaican poets, and by that time, we would learn Louise Bennett a lot. I mean, everybody knows at least one Louise Bennett poem by heart. Like it was like at school, we would just have what they call choral speaking, and it would be a big thing to be able to go up and say poems. So the poems that so it's funny because we learned like Longfellow and things like that in the classroom, but the poems that we would go up and recite were Louise Bennett, they were Mikey Smith, they were Jean Victor Breeze. You know what I mean? So that's my answer. That's how I was one of those people who would love to recite, and I still do today. Just love the kind of putting the poem in the body and reciting.
What about like Your first poem, do you remember your first poem?
No, no, I don't really. I suddenly remember writing a poem and reading it out in assembly, and that was sort of the equivalent of year 7. So I was, 11 years old, first beginning of secondary school. So it was a big thing to sort of read something out in front of the whole school. I remember that, and it was a poem about autumn, and it was quite rhymey. It was quite traditional. It sounded as if it was probably written a century before, but I'm still quite proud of it at the time. But yeah, it's I don't, but in a sense, I don't. It was the first poem read out loud, but I don't think it's necessarily the first poem I read. I wrote,
Yeah.
I wrote or sort of composed it in my head.
Yeah, 2 memories. I'm not sure what the first poem I ever wrote was, but I remember being at uni. Must have been around like my final year and writing some poems, and they were really bad. They were really, really, really bad. And the way I knew they were bad was that I could see, like, I would read them out to people, including my mentors, like just people who I've fallen in with, whether friends or so on. And they were like, and you would see in their eyes, people who don't want to tell it. Perhaps it's a good job they didn't tell me, because it probably would have killed my drive or yearning of it. But those were really bad poems. Those are my first poems. The other thing I remember is, for the anecdote, is that my girlfriend, when I was about, I just left uni, there was a huge hurricane in Jamaica, Hurricane Ivan or something like that, devastated a lot. And I wrote a poem, and I said to her, I feel very proud of this poem when I read it. She's like, don't read it. Don't read the poem. Just but it's so and so, and I don't want to hear it. It was kind of it was that was like, that's my memory of the early poems. Those poems that I talk about in my 3rd year, I was patterning Shakespeare's sonnets. That was my thing. I'm gonna reading Shakespeare's sonnets and trying to write in that kind of tone and use that kind of language, because I thought that I must have heard that's what you do. You imitate. So yeah.
Can I just cut in there, because I think it's a really, really big issue that how as a writer, you often, we often think we find our voice through those dead poets, and then of course we shouldn't sound like the dead poets, but in a way, ultimately, I think you've got to read the dead and the living, and ultimately you do find your voice, but it takes a very long time on your voices. When I'm teaching, I always call that, I do a session called Just William, and I just kind of say, don't try to sound like William Blake, William Wordsworth, or who's the other William? I've done completely blank. Anyway, 3 Williams. To try and avoid sounding like that.
Yeah.
But writing sonnets, giving people, it's like the past masters in painting. They always, you had to copy. You had to try and copy. And I do think there's something to be said for that, for writers, just as part of sort of a broader apprenticeship, is actually just trying to walk in the footsteps of other, like dead, especially dead writers, just to kind of learn form, learn those fundamentals of form, and then throw it away, maybe, but start as part of a process.
That's
I think that's important. It's part of the process, not at the end. It's just maybe it's one way of beginning. Yeah,
I mean, going back to your opening gambit and what I was saying, how I admire, what I really admire is the fact that is how you introduce poetry. To say, okay, we're gonna sort of we're gonna look at poetry existing in so many spaces, so many places, and poetry coming from so many sources, rather than just something that you read in a book, or something that's from a dead old sort of a dead man, or woman. But I like that, because when I'm thinking back about the imitating Shakespeare, and so on, is that a lot of why I was doing those things, imitating those dead white men, was that was what, even though we had our poetry, we had the Louis Bennett, we spoke about Louis Bennett, we had our, sort of like natural kind of access to poetry, if you listen to what's around you, if you tap into the culture and so on. But you sort of like thought that that's down here, and this is what you're to aspire to. So I think it kind of just I guess I was just really thinking back about your approach to teaching and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So thinking about the writing process as well, I know as a poet and like young people that are always aspiring to poets, what would you say to them about them thinking about writing a poem or starting to like just form a poem or be creative? What advice would you give to somebody that's thinking about writing poetry but not sure where to start or how to go with it, or what advice?
I mean, I would say, both the reading and the listening, and now, of course, you go on YouTube and, find so many things. I mean, to give an example, like there's a poem called OCD that I made my son listen to. So my son's just recently got really, really into rap. He's doing A-level English. We got really, really into rap. And I thought he might be quite interested in some spoken word poetry, even though I say tons of it. But anyway, and there's a poem that I was introduced to by someone who said they hated poetry called OCD by Neil Hilborn, which went viral online, and I think the poet himself, he actually has OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and it's a really powerful poem. I first read it on the page, and then I read it and I heard him, I listened to him reading. So it's things like that. I would pick poems that I think are just absolutely sort of blow my mind on so many levels. Because what's clever about it, of course, he uses the repetition of performance to enact his OCD, but then there's this expectation of the repetition, but then he'll cut through with these one-liners that are just so sharp in terms of the language and everything. It's so clever. So things like that, I think, are a really good way of getting people to kind of engage with the work. Look at it on the page, look at it in performance. Because I think the problem with when people think of spoken word poetry, they think, oh, it's just for performance, that it doesn't actually work on the page. But I think the really good stuff does work on the page. So yeah, I would do that. I'd probably sort of give them some sort of reading and listening list. I always give students like reading and a listening list. But I would also encourage them to engage with other art forms, because for me as a writer, I've been very, very inspired by a real range. I mean, as you heard, that the song lyrics, song especially, but visual arts as well. Art exhibitions. I still remember the Sensation exhibition. I think it was 1997. Anyway, it was a long time ago. I still remember going and thinking, wow, visual artists are really pushing the boat out in terms of form, in terms of subject matter. It was just mind-blowing for me, and just sort of opened my brain to other avenues, other ideas. I'm really into ideas, and I really like film as well. So I think there's an age in to be a writer, you do have to read a lot, and you do have to love reading, and you have to write every day and all that. But I think you have to be very, very open to other art forms, because I don't believe that yes, we call this is poetry and this is film and this is so, but they're all connected. They're all connected. And it's just really important to remember that. So long answer to a short question, really. I like that's why I like teaching whole courses, because just doing one workshop I want to do, I want to take them through a whole year of stuff, so you can really sort of look at stuff from all angles.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think I say to students, I mean, mind you, I teach at university, but I would say to anybody, I can't overemphasize reading. Just read as widely as possible. Keep an open mind. Keep an open mind about what poetry is. I think that's really important for young people. Keep an open mind. But also, as Patience has already said, listen a lot. Listen, go on, go to poetry readings, where they're happening. And again, keep an open mind. Don't just go to, this dichotomy though between page poetry and performance poetry is rubbish anyway. But yeah, actually, I would say keep an open mind about what poetry is and can be. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that my work, so if you look at some of my older collections, I cringe looking back at the poetry, because it's like, at that time it meant a lot. But then if I look now, and I just by going to open mics and things like that, that really enhanced my own ability to perform better, to write poetry better. So I do feel like going to open mics is it's a massive thing. So just going more into that about your own writing process. How do you write a poem?
I mean, it helps if you've read a lot of poetry, I think, because you kind of have so many ideas just sort of bubbling and bubbling away. I mean, Telling Tales, a classic one. I mean, I had to reread the whole of the Canterbury Tales, really, to do justice to that, because it was really, it was like hearing those, having that sense of other poets who come before you, kind of echoing around in your head. Was kind of, it was terrifying. Like, oh, I'm going to take on Chaucer, but also inspiring with that sense that somebody had done it before me and they were there kind of rooting for me. So I like working with form a lot, and of course I like working with traditional forms. You know, I don't know, I haven't done much research beyond Europe. You know, there's still so much I could do, but you know, so I love the sonnet, I love the sestina, I love the now, all those kind of those forms. So I like the fact that someone else has already done that work, and then I can just kind of slot in, you know, with the sestina. The sestina is this old French form, although if you go to Spain, they'll say it's Spanish. If you go to Hungary, they'll say it's Hungarian. So it's a really interesting one. You know, we think it's this, but it might be something else. You have the same 6 end words in each stanza in a set formation that was set down in about the year 1250, and it's been the same ever since. And then the last stanza, you have these 6 words are all included. And so a poet friend of mine gave me these 6 words. This is one way, there's just one way to write a poem. Gave me the 6 words and said, right, off you go, write a sestina. And so I did, and I got so excited, I wrote 6 more sestines using the same things. This is just me. I mean, I am quite nerdy about form, but that does, you know, often kind of inspires. Certainly the technicality, what I'm working with. I really love that sense of words being these 3-dimensional things. You know, almost like a word sculpture. I really love that element. So, so yes, and I hear words aloud in my head often when I'm writing. Although I can't necessarily perform all the stuff that I write. Maybe about a third of it. So yeah, it's a very meandering answer because it's almost, there are different ways in, but I think quite often my way is kind of having a sense of form or some linguistic pun or something that I find interesting that I want to kind of, that then generates a whole myriad of ideas, and I go off on some different tangents.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, there's all sorts of approaches depending on what you're writing. Because my first book, the approach is, it was different the way I went to work from how I wrote this, because the first book, Thinking with Trees, had to do with Thinking with Trees, in a nutshell, involved walking in this particular place. But for most of it, I mean, there are poems that are set in different places, obviously, but the core of it is like set in, well, everybody knows Leeds, right? Roundhead Park. The core of it is based on walking in Roundhead Park and the woods, and it's sort of like it's a site. The place and sense of place is important, and the body in the place in space, and going again and again and again. So it's sort of like this kind of trail in itself, right? You know, and you go and you go and you go, and every day it's like you're keeping some kind of a record in a sense of what happens, and then you have but the point of it is that it's site linked, or I don't know if it's site specific, but it's linked to place. Because also, and I think this is a key point with Thinking with Trees, I go and I would write while walking. You know, I'm walking and I am writing, so that the interconnectedness between both is so crucial there, right? That book doesn't exist otherwise, you know, outside of that. It's really that. And then obviously there's the polishing and the editing that takes place afterwards, but it's the connection with the place that's important. With this now, yes, connection with place, but in a different way, because I'm writing about Venice, and there's a core part around Venice, but also it's set in different cities. So actually for this, I went to Venice twice. Because the first time was, you know, okay, so, you know, as first times go, you know, there's so much that you need to take in. And then you write, and then you say to yourself that, you know, you've kind of forgotten a lot of things, and you need to go back to kind of, you know, put yourself in the environment once more. And obviously your thing develops, so you have specific things that you need to look at. The second time I went, I was looking at galleries and paintings around, you know, Black figures in the Renaissance and all of that. So you're responding with this. I'm responding to Shakespeare and responding to, you know, I needed to absorb both the Othello play, you know, watching like films, the one with the it was Kenneth Branagh. There's the one with anyway, watching films of Othello and reading the play obviously several times to kind of, it's the absorbing the text to kind of turn something and get something out.
Thank you so much. We have some questions.
We have a question. So that people at home can hear, I'll come up to the microphone. So the question is, I was wondering if you could talk about your relationship with audience when you read. What is it that you hope for in a reading performance? And secondly, do you experience a feeling of connection with the audience or indeed yourself when you read your work? Is this different if you are an audience member?
So, yeah. Is that one question? Two. Audience. Well, when you're first kind of creating you are your own audience. You know, as a writer, you're always you have to kind of. I have to be inspired by my own stuff to kind of keep going, really. But I do what I loved about standing up there just now was a sense I was getting energy. Just say getting energy. I think you were giving me energy, and I was giving energy back, and I was kind of feeding off that energy. And I have done readings where, you know, I get all readings, even though I might not be physically, you know, reading from the book because it's in my head, but books are still there. Where I haven't got that energy, it's hard, you know. You just kind of keep giving and giving and giving. You're feeling there's nothing.
Yeah.
What's happening? You know, why am I not connecting? So it's a very, very positive thing. I mean, I think that's what I love about poetry out loud in this kind of setting, because it's a communal activity. You know, I love reading one-on-one with the page in a little corner, but something quite special about that. I've forgotten the second half of the question, or the first half. So I've kind of answered the, you know, how I feel.
Yeah, what is it you hope for?
What do I hope for?
Yeah, what is it you hope for in a reading, which you've kind of answered, actually, I think. And do you experience a feeling of connection with the audience? So you've answered that as well.
Okay, great.
And
The other bit was about being in the audience.
part was, if you are in the audience, is it different when you're in the audience?
If I'm in the audience when someone else is reading, and how do I relate to? Well, I mean, in a sense, I mean, what's wonderful about this is I've been an audience to other people, even from the panel, and it's wonderful. I always love it. I've always loved hearing other people read, and sometimes I'm thinking, oh, I want to see. Oh, did he on Jean Bear? You know, where did he split? The way he split that line when he was walking through the city, and then he turned a corner, and you sort of see the text turning as well. And so I absolutely adore that energy that. As an audience member, I sort of feel it's weird. I sort of got both here because I'm up here, so I sort of feel as a fellow member, I'm kind of rooting for you in a sense that we're up on this side of the table, and yet I'm also psychologically kind of on that side of the table as well, and I love that. As you can see, I just love it when things are complicated in both, you know, more than one thing.
Yeah. No, I feel that there's the energy that I hear. I was getting the energy through the eyes of people.
Yeah, you could
It's
see
when it's like mostly in the face, and so the face, you know, obviously that's an embodied energy as well. I mean, people. So you know, I like that, because I guess what I'm thinking is that often you go to these places where you get the stage lights and they're blinding you, can't see anybody, and when you can't see anybody. And in addition, you can't hear because people are quiet and they're more, you know, restrained. That's when you're talking about the energy, that's the challenge. because you can't see and you can't hear. So you're reading in a vacuum. And I find in those, obviously I've learned, picked up things, over time now. I've been performing for a little while. I find that in those cases, you have to build up that energy. You sort of have to bring that energy and kind of impose it. No, I'm serious in the sense that you really like this, it's performance and the sound is so important and the rhythm is so important. You have to kind of say, I'm just going to go out there. I'm just going to use my voice and use my body and then I find that people will come with you. It takes a little while, they'll do it slowly, but eventually they can come with you. It's not like, it's different from with like, I'm just keeping it real with a West Indian audience that performs. Sometimes it's kind of different because West Indian spectatorship, I find, is like naturally more noisy and they kind of like respond and call and respond. It's kind of vibe. But audiences are different. That's natural. So I find sometimes you have to just bring your own energy.
It's great you brought up that cultural difference issue because it is. Even things like I used to notice back in the day, not so much now at all, but London audiences were much noisier. The more multicultural audience usually the noisier, but I think that's starting to change as well. I think that's a really important thing because I think people, cross-fertilization of cultures. That's right. And when people attend certain things, there's certain expectations. Again, it used to be like if you went to a sort of reading back in the day, people would not clap until the end. They would, it was an absolute no, absolute deathly silence. Someone could read for a whole hour, no applause. Then people applaud a lot at the end. They hold it back. Whereas again, and then on the performance poetry scene, people would during poems. They have to give the energy during, not even wait to the end of each poem. But I would say even now though that again those sort of culturally there's more of a breakdown. And I've been to sort of more formal readings where people have clapped between poems, and you're often no, don't do that. It's an interesting thing, but it's because people sort of sometimes they want to, or they may be used to going to a slightly different vibe of the place. So I find that really interesting how people, move between different spaces and knowing what's maybe culturally acceptable in one and not so much in another, but how they also interact with each other. As we said, the whole performance and so-called literary poetry scenes have started to merge much more, which I think is a very good thing.
I think I'm with you both. Like, the energy is very important because I'm a quiet performer. I kind of feel like my voice and the way I am, I'm kind of like very in myself. But I feel like the power of my words do the energy for me. So I kind of like use it through the words rather than my body and me. Because it takes me time to build that energy and that confidence to just do what I need to do, even though everyone's like, you look fine, but I know on my inside I'm building that confidence. But I use my words and my voice through that to build the energy, and then that builds me as well. And I think because I do go to a lot of open mics, I'm very passionate about just being a real supporter of people that champion poetry and do poetry and have all these open mics. And it's really important to be part of the audience as well, and to champion people that are performing and to be part of that vibe, because we all work collectively together. We're all here creatively together doing this together because we enjoy it and it's something we love and we want to see grow and keep growing. So it's important. I think we should have some questions from the audience. Anybody want to have a question?
Jason, I'm really interested in why was Othello such an inspiration to you, and actually why was Chaucer such an inspiration to you?
Do I know? Honestly, Othello just kind of came up in that first. Remember that first bit that I read, which is like like an interlocking kind of series. He just came up because of what I was talking about, kind of like the speaker, young black man, well, young at the time, and that kind of interracial dynamic of which kind of just came with the space, and because of the gaze, Right, on Othello, it's like, I say like, Iago is the voice of the play, it's like, the gaze of Othello is always being looked at, and that's that's the gaze of othering, the outsider, the foreigner, whatever. That's how that metaphor came up. And I said, what if I walked with this? What if I followed this to kind of look into it more to see what it could offer? And it kind of just built from there. Kind of, looking at this kind of dynamic in society, really. Yeah.
It's on the Chaucer. Just about to see you. Yeah, I did Chaucer for A-level. I did the general prologue, which is where you get these character sketches. It's amazing. It blew my mind. I love poetry and I love literature by then. I was 17 years old. Walked into a class. The teacher introduced us to the general prologue. Meeting all these characters, Chaucer's humour, Chaucerian irony, getting this real sense of their physicality, actually. I found that really interesting. The sense of, also that sense of performance, the sense, because back in that day, that sense of recitation, the poetry, and the wife of Bath, I have to say, coming across the wife of Bath, I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And so then a few years later, so my second collection, Transformatrix, came out in 2000. That one I did a very short version of just the wife of Bath, kind of speaking, just from the general prologue, really, and the prologue to her tale, amalgamated. But then couldn't really let her go. We kept thinking, I kept revisiting Chaucer. I'd pick Chaucer off the shelf every few years and read another of the tales and think, I love it. Oh, at university, I did a special paper in Chaucer. So Chaucer was kind of a favourite poet, certainly favourite dead poet in back then. And so and then just totally out of the blue, I was approached to be Canterbury laureate. It was weird because I had worked at University of Kent, but they didn't know I liked Chaucer. And on the remit, there was a bullet point, and one of the bullet points was you have to write some poems relating in some way to Canterbury. And I thought, right, this is a sign I've got to do some more of these Canterbury Tales poems. And then was encouraged to sort of apply for funding, and decided to do the whole lot, which of course was like a 2.5-year project. So it's just amazing. So yeah, so playing with language, playing with character, playing with story as well through poetry. I really love narrative in poetry. Poetry was there before the novel. We told stories through poetry, orally. So it was sort of in a way taking poetry back to those roots.
Thank you. We do have another question online.
Yes. Would you recommend driving a poetry session for our youth of Huddersfield, and how would you go about it? And that's from Jodie. Very specific.
Driving a poetry session for the youth of Huddersfield. Yeah, sounds very it's very specific. Yeah, why not? it'd be fun. I mean, I do the kind of thing that I mentioned earlier. I'd introduce and get them to, in advance, probably watch stuff online on YouTube. Say, right, watch Neil Holden's OCD, watch so-and-so doing this, send them a reading list, get this stuff done, and then I'd hopefully turn up. And I think it makes a massive difference if they do stuff before you turn up. I think kind of turn up and then start from scratch. If you're doing like a 1 or 2 hours, you just parachuted in, it doesn't really go deep. Whereas if people have done a little bit of prep, even if they just listen to one poem before then, you've got something to kind of some material to work with. So that's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm for it as well. I personally haven't done a lot of poetry teaching and workshop with like teenagers. Because that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Say it. But I'm for it, and I'm in for it. So just be thinking of talking about talking about the specifics and going in. But yeah, I think that's something great. I'm always up for working with young people. I used to be a teacher, so I was a secondary school teacher before I went into academia. And I taught at that point, but you teach, I did teach poetry and all of that, but not in just general because I was an English teacher. I taught French as well and drama. So I did. So I guess, I have some background, with working. But anyway, I'm for it.
I think there's something passionate about teaching kids, especially youth, the youth, to self-express. Poetry is about self-expressing yourself. And if you can teach kids to do that today, then, you know, it's important, because they'll grow up to be, you know, confident adults that can self-express. Because these days I feel like we're stuck in a society where, like I've mentioned this in my workshop, you know, kids are using phones and talking and communicating through emojis and things like that, and we're losing that self-expression, that way, that art, literature, just being able to communicate. So to encourage kids and young people to be creative and to post their own poetry, and yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's amazing. So we are like right at the end, and you know, it's been such a pleasure to be with you, Patience and Jason. It's just, yeah, and I thank Huddersfield Literature Festival for giving us this platform, this stage to be able to do this and to share our amazing poetry. And so yeah, big up to them, and thank you to our amazing audience here and online for being here with us today. Have you got any final words before we have to sign off?
Oh, just thank you for coming. You know, thank you for coming. You know, I hope that I'll see you tonight at Linton's event, because I've just been told I think I've got a ticket for that, so I'm really excited. But what I didn't realise was I was sitting opposite him on the train. He had a mask on, so no, it can't be. And I just looked at him thinking, if you're Linton, you'll just greet me. And he didn't greet me, but we know each other. So teasing mercilessly about this forevermore.
Good thing. Well, yeah, for me, just to say, echo what you said, Sharena. Yeah, really, you know, enjoyed the opportunity, enjoyed meeting Patience, enjoyed meeting yourself, enjoyed hearing poetry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.